the European Federation of Geologists, building blocks of innovative, effective global climate policy, critical minerals for green energy. This is a session that is dedicated to identifying the building blocks of policy needed to make global change. Each of the speakers will focus on the building block in their presentation, including cases, proposals, starting from Italy, then Europe, and outside the European continent. How these elements are becoming the foundation for policy characterized by global impact? We are asking this question, first of all, to David Govoni, President of the European Federation of Geologists. Then the floor will be of Daniel Caceres Batra, Representante Regional and Sustainable Ocean Alliance in Lima, Peru. Then it will be the floor of Francesco Violo, President of the Italian National Council of Geologists, and Rudy Ruggeri of Italian Council of Geologists. And this session will be closed by Maureen Gallagher, Global Ambassador, European Federation of Geologists, Colorado, United States. The floor now is to David Govoni, President of the European Federation of Geologists, on the topic of innovative science, raw materials from geothermal fluids, getting the most out of resource extraction. How is it possible, President Govoni? Thank you.
We'll go to the presentation. No, but I need to, devo vederla qua. Non si... Presentation. Just a moment. Cosa need? Yeah, but yes, great. Thank you. Thank you. So, good morning. So we decided to divide this session in different building blocks. And the building blocks I'm talking about is the technical building blocks. And I will do with some examples taken from projects that European Federation of Geologists is developing. I will start with a quick introduction about EFG, and then I will move to some of the European funded projects where European Federation of Geologists is involved. And then I will focus on one of the projects, CRM-geothermal. And then now or later, we will, depends on the discussion, I will talk also on some action that European Federation of Geologists is doing on creating a database mapping the know-how on critical raw material. But let's start with a very quick presentation on what is EFG. It is an organization representing professional geologists in Europe. We have our members are national association. For example, in Italy, the National Council of Geologists. And overall in Europe, we represent around 45,000 geoscientists. And if we count the network of our associated members, it's around 150,000 professionals, all in the geological sector. EFG is involved in different projects, and I mentioned on this slide some projects that are somehow related to critical raw material, CRM-geothermal, and it is the project I will talk about in a few minutes. TIMREX, that is an EAT raw material funded project, which is about is a master program in mineral exploration. And FIC-Fighters is a project that just started a few months ago, is about recycling the photogypsum waste. And inside the recycling process, there is also the recovery of critical raw material as part of the process. But as I said, I will focus in this presentation, this technical presentation, on one of the projects that is a CRM geothermal. And what's the challenge in this year that is faced on this project? It is the extraction of critical raw material from geothermal fluid. It is a project funded about 80 million euros, started in May 2022 and will end in April 2026. And EFG is one of the partners of this project. So the concept is very simple and very easy. It is at the same time just extract heat and produce an electricity, and at the same time extract valuable elements from the geothermal fluid. The project has 20 partners, so it's a quite large. There are really many entities involved. And it covers 23 countries, not only Europe, also outside Europe, in Africa. The project has different targets, different objectives, and one of those projects is establish an overview on potential raw material in geothermal fluid. And the starting point to understand this potential is a project that was concluded last year called Reflect, and it was about mapping geothermal activities, geothermal wells. And so starting from the database developed on that project, started this new CRM geothermal project. The second objective of this project is understand the source of selected raw materials and their mobility. And these two and these information are necessary for understand the potential extraction of from the geothermal brines. The third objective is regards the technology for the innovation extractions of the selected critical raw materials. And then we will assess the environmental, social, economic viability of these sources, and then demonstrate on the pilot site the potential of the studies that has been done in the previous phases. What are the expected impacts of this project? The impact we are targeting is cover a significant percentage of current and future needs of critical raw material from these sources. And this is a target, and the impact we have still not a way to measure what would be the impact. But certainly the target and the impact we are looking for is a resilient and domestic European critical raw material supply chain. And this project and the outcome can be easily integrated with other activities, especially in the processing industry that are being developing developed in Europe. I put it here a map taken from a recent publication of the map showing the potential of the 6 main geothermal areas with lithium-rich fluids. And I put this slide, and also since we are in Italy Pavilion, because 2 of the potential target areas are in Italy. The second part of my presentation, I will just briefly mention here, and then maybe we will come back later to this in the question and answer sessions. In Europe, we have a strong need of mapping know-how regarding critical raw material. And this, as European Federation of Geologists, from our position, we were asked from several stakeholders but contact of experts for particular minerals, including public stakeholders like the European Commission. So the idea that we started to look at is starting from our database of geologists to build a sort of map, the know-how, the background of our members, try to see what kind of expertise we have there, and build from that. And we did that starting from the database that we already have. And this project will be launched in maybe very few weeks, but the database is already working. So if you scan the QR code and you go online, all the infrastructure or the database is there. Just we need still with our members to let everyone make our national association aware of the project and start to engage people to fill the database. I will not go into the details on the type of information that we try to collect, but let's say we try to be consistent. What we know are also the type of information that the European Commission was looking for. And of course, everything is flexible, so it can be implemented, it can be adapted to what are the needs that will come out the next months on this topic. I will stop here for now, and I take also the chance to mention one event that we will have next year in Zaragoza in Spain, the International Professional Geology Conference, because that is a moment where we plan, we really want, from our perspective, and we know geologists are not all supply chain, just part, but they are at the very beginning of the supply chain. So it's very important. We want to focus part of this conference in 2025 on these topics. And hopefully for that day, a lot will happen in Europe and not only on critical raw materials. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Boboni. I think we have some questions for you, but I will ask you later. Then let's pass, let's go through the speakers. And asking Daniel Caseras Batra, Representante Regional and Sustainable Ocean Alliance, Lima, Peru. I think you can hear me, Daniel.
Hello, yes. Can you guys hear me well?
Can you talk again, Daniel?
Hello, can you hear me well?
Just wait 2 seconds because we have to improve the signal.
Okay, let me know. Can you see my slides?
Daniel, please again.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, it's perfect. Now we can hear you very, very clearly. Thank you very much, Daniel. We are setting up your presentation now, and your topic is the innovative advocacy, environmentally responsible extraction of critical minerals from the ocean floor. Is it possible, Daniel?
Thank you so much. Well, the deep sea, the ocean floor has been a place where this question from extraction of critical minerals has been relatively asked. When minerals were discovered in the deep sea in the Challenger, back in 1900s, people knew that there were minerals, but we knew we didn't have the technology to go get them. But it was not until the 1980s when it was talked about getting the minerals from the ocean floor that people said that it was going to be a sustainable way to get minerals for all the technologies that we would eventually need. The reason being is that the deep sea, it's the least known ecosystem we have of today. Right now, it's an ecosystem that not only is very unknown, but is very hostile. It's very, very deep, so the amount of pressure that it has can be up to 400 times larger than the pressure we have currently on the atmosphere. Usually, life can be all the way to the deepest points, and it's a place where the minerals can be found from 3,000 meters deep all the way to farther than 6,000 meters deep. So back then in 1980s, for example, life used to not be thought to be that deep and exist that way and be that biodiverse. So when UNCLOS was written, which is UNCLOS is the law of the sea, we didn't even we hadn't even discovered hydrothermal vents, for example. So people just thought the international law system just thought that the deep sea was just a place for mineral services to be provided for us. That's why in the law of the sea, which is the constitution of the sea, which regulates things like deep sea mining, for example, didn't take in consideration much about biodiversity until Article 145, which was the article that talked about taking care of the marine environment in general, but not only the marine environment, but now we need to talk about biodiversity also in that way. So the deep sea is a very little known ecosystem. It's a very hostile ecosystem, like I mentioned. Life can be very deep, so with a lot of pressure, with very, very little sunlight, and also with very, very cold waters, less than 4 Celsius of water. So that means everything grows very, very slow. Cold water makes everything slow down to the metabolic and atomic level, which means that life there takes a very long time to reproduce, but also has a long time of longevity. We can find sponges in the deep sea that can be 13,000 years old, and sharks that can be up to 800 years old, for example. So the deep sea has very fragile life. And that's the reason that it's so important to understand that we need to know more about the deep sea before we go ahead with a mining activity. The deep sea, like I mentioned, has three types of of metals. We have the polymetallic nodules, which are the ones that I'm talking about right now, and which are the ones that society talks about right now, specifically for the green transition. The reason being is because they're sources of nickel, cobalt, copper, and manganese, which are bottleneck. Specifically, nickel and cobalt are very bottleneck metals for the green transition that are very needed when we talk about the transition that we need. So it used to be romanticized the polymetallic nodules because they're just resting on the deep floor. It was just going to be a place, a vast place to be able to talk, get the metals, pick them up, and not have any or non-environmental or very little environmental impact. So it was romanticized as a solution for the green energy. But now we know that polymetallic nodules, which are the nodules that are just resting on the seafloor, most of the biodiversity that lives there, that are in areas the size of France, for example, there are huge areas of polymetallic nodules. Most of the life there is nodule dependent, which means that needs the nodules as substrate to be able to live there. The second type of metals that we can find are from the polymetallic sulfides, that are the hydrothermal vents, the ones that I mentioned we didn't know about yet when UNCLOS or Law of the Sea was written. But we're not talking about regulations right now on them. And the third are cobalt-rich crusts, which are usually found in seamounts, which can be very shallow. I mean, compared to the others, up to 3,000 meters deep, usually, or a little bit less in some other areas. And are areas where usually there's a lot of upwelling ecosystems, a lot of shark nursing, a lot of sponges. But currently at the International Seabed Authority, where we're talking about regulating the deep sea and the minerals, we're talking about polymetallic nodules, which are the first ones over here, are the first type of metals that are being talked about regulations. And right now, regulations are not finished yet. These are the areas where exploration currently occurs. There's actually more than 30 exploration contracts, not exploitation. Deep sea mining is an activity that still has not occurred commercially yet, but there has been exploration licenses. And the area that mostly everyone talks about when we talk about deep sea mining currently is the Clarion-Clipperton Zone. As you can see in the middle here in the Pacific, the Clarion-Clipperton Zone is the area where the most amount of polymetallic nodules are talked about, and is the area where most of the countries currently have exploration licenses. And then the rest we can see the polymetallic sulfides in the which are the cobalt-rich crusts, which are the hydrothermal vents, which we can see along the ridges. And we can see also the cobalt-rich ferromanganese crust, which are the cobalt crusts that I talked about, seamounts, usually, that you can see in the little brown area over here. Well, so deep sea mining, this is activity, like I mentioned, has not started yet commercially, but it's an activity that will have a large scale impacts. These are the life usually that are currently associated with the polymetallic nodules that I mentioned about. Most of it is polymetallic nodule dependent, which means if we remove the nodules, they will disappear. And they're polymetallic ecosystem associated, which means if we take out the nodules, also the life that's not dependent on nodules directly will also be affected because the whole ecosystem depends on it. And now, for example, we know that there's oxygen services. This year, there was an article that came on Nature. I recommend everyone look it up. That polymetallic nodules, it seems that they're providing oxygen via lysis in the water molecules. So they're the first non-green oxygen providing, and it's called dark oxygen. So it seems that the deep sea has also been providing other services more than biodiversity. And then the second is hydrothermal vents that are still not being talked about in regulations. Usually they're the inactive ones because they're active and inactive hydrothermal vents. And the third ones are the cobalt-rich crusts, like I mentioned, that are usually associated with seamounts. Then there has been a report commission already from SINTEF, which focused on 7 critical minerals from the green transition, that asks the question: do we need the minerals from deep sea mining? And it focused on lithium, cobalt, nickel, manganese, rare earth elements. And because a renewable energy future will require large scale up on critical minerals, but will be less resource intensive than today's fossil fuels based energy, this report talked that if we focus on a circular economy from all the energy, from all the metal intensive economy from fossil fuels that we already have, if we focus on recycling all the fossil fuels technology, getting the metals from there, and mining from the fossil fuel technologies that we already had, we will be able to reach the green transition by 2050 without using minerals from the deep sea. So we currently do not need the minerals from deep sea mining from the green transition if we focus on getting the minerals from the energy intensive or from the metal intensive technologies from the fossil fuel industry. Deep sea mining, like I mentioned, will have a lot of impacts. Like I mentioned, just removing the nodules will have a large impact that will destruct ecosystems and species associated. And also, we don't know yet many of the impacts that it will have, because just like we know very little from deep sea, we know very little about from the impacts, including the impacts from the chemical, because as we know, the water is a fluid, and the ocean has 7 critical cycles, chemical cycles. We have the nitrogen cycle, the phosphorus cycle, the silicon cycle. We have the carbon cycle. So we have a cycle that's very important, specifically for carbon sequestration in the deep sea from climate change. So not understanding well how it will impact the cycles from the chemical cycles and the nutrient cycles that we have in the ocean is also a very large unknown area that we need to take care that we understand before the impacts of it. Also disruption of fisheries, because and also the carbon cycle, like I mentioned, because it will elevate a lot of nutrient plumes, carbon plumes, that can reach up all the way to the water column, because the polymetallic nodules rest in a very silty sediment. So if we just remove all the sediment will go up like it's called sediment plume that could suffocate other adjacent ecosystems and could eventually release the carbon that has been sequestered there. And who regulates the deep sea currently? It's the deep sea activities. It's the International Seabed Authority. I have been part of the International Seabed Authority for the past seven conferences. When we're looking for countries to adhere, there we are with Sustainable Ocean Alliance, where we're the largest youth ocean science and ocean professionals organization. We're accredited by the ISA, which is International Seabed Authority. We have been advocated with many other organizations for countries to take position on a moratorium. So for the first time in history, we have an opportunity to prevent a commercial activity to start before there's negative impacts. So it's the first time that we can say, let science go first before the activity starts. So we have been part of the negotiations and we have been advocating for a moratorium or a pause on the activity. We have given microgrants also for countries, for young scientists to advocate for science first and to understand the impacts and to promote the science there. And then we have had a global campaign on it from advocacy, from youth from around the world that are telling their governments to take positions, because in the International Seabed Authority, like I mentioned, regulations have not been finished, but the way UNCLOS is set up, it says that regulations should be finished. So right now there has been 32 countries that have taken a position to say no to deep sea mining first, so for science to occur, including countries like Peru, my country where I'm from, where has become the first country that has not ratified UNCLOS to say yes to a moratorium on deep sea mining. And yes, that's about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Daniel. We have a lot of information that we need ready to collect concerning the ocean floor, the bottom, also the richness of the ocean floor. I've got a question for you as well, but I'm going to ask you later if we have got time. Then let's move from the ocean floor to the focus on professionals. So the professional point of view with my colleague Rudy Ruggeri.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Rudy. It's nice to see you. From the National Council of Geologists in Italy. Italy's case in critical materials. That's what we are talking about in few minutes, in few seconds. How geoscience professional contributes to climate policy and the green energy transition? Could you explain us, Rudy?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much for the introduction, Silvia, and hi, everyone. It's an honor for me to be here at the COP29 and in representation of the CNG with this Italian pavilion. So it would be good really to give this presentation. Let me share my screen and then let me know if you see my presentation as well. Can you see it basically?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, let me put into the presentation mode. Right.
Perfect, Rudy.
Okay. So again, thank you very much on the behalf of the CNG and the president, Arcangelo Francesco Violo, and myself. I'm a member of the CNG. I'm happy to give you this presentation which again has been anticipated by Silvia, will touch base about critical materials and how we as professionals can contribute to the climate policy and the energy transition in consideration of our, again, professional of geologists. So the presentation will go through an introduction of CNG, which is CNG, some observations made by CNG on Italian critical raw materials presence and impact, the need of the critical raw materials and sustainable developments around raw materials, and how to support the climate policy for a green energy transition, and some conclusion. So this presentation will cover all of these kind of items and will take no more than 10 minutes. I hope it will be fine for you. So what's CNG then? I mean, just for the people that don't know, I mean, CNG is the Italian National Council of Geologists, has been established in 1963, is the institutional representative body of the professional of category of geologists in Italy. So we have very many tasks, honestly, but one of those is really to protect the profession, to guarantee the quality of the activities, to encourage the constant training. So basically support the professional people, doing this kind of geological activities in Italy and also elsewhere in a consistent, in a good way, and in relation, really, in adherence, let's say, of the international standards. And this has been, the main task of this representative body. We are pretty active in terms of communication, pretty active in terms of setting up events where we promote our categories, but not only, but also we speak to the stakeholders, trying to negotiate and understanding how we can support as professionals to the main challenges we have in terms of to protect the environment, in terms to set a good environmental planning on the territorial, how to recover critical raw materials, how to be basically sustainable on this planet. So you can see some picture about events that have been done by the CNG in the last, let's say, year. So let's talk about CNG observation on Italian CRM's presence and impact. As you can see from the map, I mean, Italy historically has been, an area and a country where we had a lot of mines, historical mines, from the Etruscans, from the Romans, from the Phoenicians, so from Sardinia and the Sicily and other regions in the Western Alps region. Specifically, we extracted silver, gold, copper, tin, lead, zinc, and other kind of elements, again, back in time, so from 10,000 years ago to now. The first mining code, for example, in history was drawn up in Massa Marittima in 1311 years. So it's a very old country where the historic, idea to recover critical raw materials has been always considered. If you can see the center of that circle, you can see the main minerals that are present in our country. The problem is that this issue about recovering materials has been almost stopping mines in the last century. Basically, all the areas that have been used for mining reasons has been sterilized. There's been, creating geopark and museum, and basically also we lost the momentum to maintain a good professional people leading the day with the mining sector, and that has been the issue. But again, historically, Italy has been a country where mines and the usage of raw materials has been always really important for the development of the country. Why do we need the CRMs, basically? We are in the center of the energy transition. The energy transition, you know what I mean? We need to reach out to the carbon neutrality. We need to stop pumping CO2 into the atmosphere, which means we need to focus on renewables. We need to focus on electrical mobility. We need to focus on sectors that are supporting the energy transition. And you know that to support those sectors, we need specific materials, and basically are the critical raw materials. And we have a very high impact, a high, moderate, low, and very low, depending on the kind of elements we are treating. Earth rays, for example, are very important, and you can see very high are very well connected to the sectors like renewables and e-mobility, which are again at the base of the energy transition. In Italy, again, is the contribution to the GDP of critical raw materials is really important. So it's the second largest country in Europe that need by 30% basically critical raw materials to sustain the industrialization of the country. So which means that we really need to count on critical raw materials for developing the country. That said, Europe is very dependent from critical raw materials. As you can see from this map, the blue area are the area where you can find critical raw materials, and Europe, only France and Spain have some. But earth rares, silicon, graphite, lithium, all that kind of important critical raw materials are not present in Europe. So we are very dependent from the external of Europe. That said, we really need to change the paradigm. We really need to recover critical raw materials from existing materials, because we have existing materials like printed circuit boards, lithium batteries, LCD flat screens, photovoltaic panels, all those kind of materials we can extract from those critical raw materials, and so being less dependent from the external part. And in fact, Europe, the European Commission really moved on very quickly. They set up this European Critical Raw Material Act, by which we established some pillars, which one of those is that at least 10% of the European annual consumption has to come from Europe as extraction, 40% through processing, 50% by recycling, and no more than 60% have to come from the external. So these are the pillars by which we are in Europe treating the importance presence of critical raw materials. And that said, in Italy, basically, we are sustaining all this kind of process. We set up, regulamentations, new laws that are supporting the energy transitions. And we as geologists are part of this national technical table that has been established on studying the critical raw materials, how we can get more critical raw materials internally, how we can maybe renovate some mines that have been closed in the past, and in order to recover some critical raw materials. And in order to do that, we really need the profession of geologists that have the profession really to establish where are the good amount of critical raw materials to be extracted, how to extract those critical raw materials in a sustainable way, how to use it, how to treat it. And we as geologists are really the main actor for being part of the critical raw materials trend, and especially supporting the energy transition. And in conclusion, we all want to have this critical green energy transition. We really know that the 21st century energy system will be radically different to what we had in 20th century. And the transition is really underway. We need to set these pillar policies by which we need to find the critical raw materials by nature, but also recycling the critical raw materials that are present in existing materials. We really need to shift, the development of our industrial way to manage, the materials. And we are in the middle. So if we go green, we need to go towards west, and which means that we need to use all the technology we have to sustain the sustainable development, having a higher efficiency, low carbon, smart electricity, because if we don't do that, we probably go to right. And if we go to right, this will continue to depend on fossil fuels, and we know what will be the destiny for our planet. In conclusion, remembering the European Green Deal, which are all the elements around the European Green Deal, and which means that we need to focus on this. We as geologists are at the center of all of these elements, promoting clean energy, promoting, contrasting the climate change, investing in more sustainable transportation, striving for a greener industry, eliminating pollution, financing green projects, and making more efficient our homes in terms of energy system, and basically really protecting the nature through the natural package that has been set up by the European Commission. So all those elements are in line with what I was saying before, and we as geology want to be main actors of this transition. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Rudy. Thank you to Rudy Ruggeri from the National Council of Geologists in Italy. Europe depends very strongly by the critical raw material markets, and of course, consequently, the areas of the planet where extraction takes place. So let's move to the innovative finance topic. The European Federation of Geologists is a science and technology incubator seeking just solutions to the climate crisis. This is the turn of Maureen Gallagher, Global Ambassador, European Federation of Geologists, Colorado, United States. Please, Rudy Ruggeri, if you can, remain with us. Thank you.
I will try. Thank you, Silvia.
Sylvia. Give me just 1 minute while we get switched over to my presentation. Okay, can you all see me online?
No.
Okay, we'll work on that here really quick.
We can hear you, Maureen, but we can't see anything on the screen.
Okay. What? I know, I don't know how to change it. Do you know how to do it? Here. Give us just one moment while we get the slides changed over here so you can see them. I'm trying to share. Yep, that's what I was trying to get to. Okay. Right there? Okay. I need to get this closed now. How do I get it? Too many boxes, everyone. Sorry about that. Okay, so with all of that, in case you forgot, I'm Maureen Gallagher, and I am the Global Ambassador for EFG, and I'm going to talk to you about how our organization has acted as an unknowing incubator. So when I think about, I guess I'll give just a little bit of background. So I spent a year working for EFG as their interim director of stakeholder engagement throughout 2023. As part of a leadership program I was in, and then stayed on as a volunteer to be their global ambassador. And in doing so, I got to know the organization really well. And one of the things that I noticed was that in the project work that they do, they really act as an incubator. So when you think about, some of the things that are involved in being an incubator, they really have some of those characteristics. But I want to focus on the fact that we work with funding primarily from the European Union. We have multiple funding sources that we've had from the European Union. We've had 25 projects to date. We're an organization that dates back to about 1980-81 was when the organization was established. So in that time, we've been working on 25 of these projects, and we have an enormous number of partners, literally hundreds if you add them up in totality. And as we go through this presentation, if you're interested in any of these particular projects, I'm not going to get into all of the details of the various projects, but you'll see that I do have the project number on them. If you take a picture of the slide, you can go look up that information. It's all readily available online. All right, so in looking at the types of projects that we do, and I want to step back and I want to say that how these projects come about is we have an incredibly talented, dedicated set of volunteers. There's volunteers that do all of this work, that write all of these proposals, that work with all of these partners who also write proposals that include EFG in these projects. But we really keep in mind the mission and the foundations of EFG when we're putting these projects together, right? That's not random, the things that we're trying to do. We're very invested in the SDGs. And so when I looked at these projects to see sort of how do they fit, they really fall kind of in 4 different categories. Those in which we are trying to educate. If you have been to any of the other conversations that EFG has been a part of during this COP, we really have been talking about educating the workforce, and whether that's continuing education or initial education. And we have a number of projects across the breadth of topics to try to get workers skilled up for doing the work necessary for the green energy transition, particularly with respect to critical minerals. We also work with technology. You heard David speak earlier about CRM-geothermal. At heart, we're all scientists, and we love to have those projects that really get to the heart of the science that we're interested in, and those research questions that we really want to answer. And one of the great things is this is a non-proprietary opportunity, right? We have scientists who are doing this work, and it can be shared with others. So things like our RoboMiners project, where we're looking at robotics that can go into tailings, go into old mines and do re-mining. So, part of, like I said, we're really invested in the SDGs and in the circular economy and finding solutions that don't necessarily mean, to Daniel's point, that we have to go to the ocean floor right away. Then there are those in the circular economy. FIC-Fighters, David also mentioned that very briefly. This is a really interesting project because this is about figuring out what to do with industrial waste. So you think about when buildings get torn down or a remodeling project gets done, where does the plaster go? Where do some of the building materials go, and how can those be reused and recreated into viable, valuable products for society? That project's just getting going. I really encourage you to take a look at our website over time and ask questions about FIC-Fighters and potentially get involved. And then there's the people piece, right? How do we include everyone? So the field of geology and geosciences were known for not being incredibly gender diverse. I am not a geologist. I'm an ecologist. I'm married to a geologist, but I'm not one myself. But I really do believe in the importance of geology and geosciences to absolutely every aspect of meeting our climate goals and the green transition. So that's why I am EFG's global ambassador. But we have projects where we're trying to empower women, we're trying to empower youth, etc., and to continue to get them interested in the field. So what makes a successful incubator? When I think about a successful incubator, I think about having having individuals and having organizations that have an entrepreneurial spirit, and they really want to throw ideas out. They are risk takers. They'll throw an idea out and see who wants to, sort of grab it and go with it. And those are the kinds of folks that are attracted to the European Federation of Geologists as an entity. The volunteers that we have are incredibly entrepreneurial, and they are so willing to share the outcomes, right? That's what all these projects are about. Every project that we have, it's about how do we build something that the next person or the next organization can take and run with it and continue to grow. So when I was thinking about the fact that Italy in particular within their pavilion wanted to talk about innovation, that's how we came up with these building blocks, right? And this is the finance COP. So we need to talk about money. And, there are very important people, much more important than me, and that are talking about astronomical dollar figures, right? Well, here we are, this little organization that is doing great things with small amounts of money. And so I really want to encourage everyone, to think that it's not just the really big dollars. Don't get me wrong. Those are going to be incredibly necessary, and they were incredibly necessary probably decades ago. But there's so much going on in the sphere that is small. And that's what we wanted to highlight here today, that these small things can become very big things. So just with respect to that, we're creative about how we do this, right? We're using grant dollars. We're using resources from other organizations. We have universities, we have other NGOs, we have even industry that are putting resources into this. Sometimes it's people, sometimes it's materials, sometimes somebody's loaning us a lab, those sorts of things. And like I said, we do have multiple sources through the European Union in which we've gotten funding to date. And I just want to really emphasize the whole concept of non-proprietary, right? We're all in this together, and being able to share is the most important part of all of this. Novel solutions, they're going to modernize our industry. So when I came to EFG and I started learning about some of the projects that are going on, again, as an ecologist, I live in the world of inland fisheries, not ocean fisheries. That's my day job is in inland fisheries in the United States. And, when I found out particularly about things like CRM-geothermal, where we're trying to solve multiple solutions at the same time, right? So we're trying to figure out how we can further advance the use of geothermal, but then can we get some critical raw materials out of that at the same time? Sort of, as we say in the States, two birds, one stone. And then most of our projects, I shouldn't say most, all of our projects, we try to incorporate some public participation. And there are a lot of benefits to public participation. It's not just in the creation of the products that we end up with at the end of these various projects, but when you're building that participation and you're getting that information in the ether and people are starting to learn the terminology, they're hearing the words, and even if they don't hear them again for another year or two, they start to have that acknowledgement, and acknowledgement builds acceptance. One of the biggest challenges with mining is the whole concept of not in my backyard, right? We heard Rudy talk about how so much mining has been shut down in Italy, and those mines have been closed, and it can be really difficult to start up something new, whether that is mining or something else. We take the CEEGS project, that's, I'll tell you what CEEGS stands for. It's Novel CO2-based Electrothermal Energy and Geological Storage System, right? So here's another way we're trying to find, it's a multiple multiple product, multiple solution in one study, right? How do we get a different type of energy, but then also how are we going to store it? And that's critically important. And just here in the next few days, we will, EFG and the partners at CEEGS will be having a video contest to try to get some ideas from European citizens, right? Because when we start these projects, we don't start with the solution, right? We have an idea of what we might find out, but we really don't know what the solution is. And here's where we're going out and we're asking the public, hey, what great ideas do you have? What do you think? But then they're going to remember that when this comes around again. And then finally, environmentally and socially just solutions, right? I talked about a little bit about ENGIE a few minutes ago. That is a project where we really were focused at getting women into the geosciences. And our FIC-Fighters project that is just getting off the ground. You know, FIC stands for fair, inclusive, circular, and healthy communities, right? So it really is focused on the just part of all of this and trying to collaborate with communities and find solutions, you know, to the building waste. And then finally, I want to say something that I think everyone who's ever been involved with the European Federation of Geologists, and particularly past president Vitor Correa, should be very, very proud of the International Raw Materials Observatory. This was a concept that became a reality, and now it is a global leader in helping us understand the future of raw materials. And I do suggest, if you have a chance, Google Intra, take a look at their website, look at their world barometer. There's some really fascinating information in there, so that we sort of know what trends are in the world of critical raw materials. And they've also put together, just recently released, their 2050 scenarios. And these look at a whole host of issues. It was a huge planning effort, taking a look globally at what we might expect by 2050 with respect to the ability to extract those and find pathways for those minerals. So, you know, with that, I will leave you with EFG's lasting impact as an incubator. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maureen, for your presentation. Innovation, sustainability, science, projects, cooperation, money. These were the pillars of your brilliant presentation. Thank you very much. I'd like to ask you, in particularly to you, Maureen, and to David. We are here together in Baku. What is, I mean, how is the air that you are breathing here in COP28 in Baku, Azerbaijan? And which are the instances, the proposals that you feel you need to put on the table? David? No? No, I can't hear you. You want to come here?
Does it work?
Yes, perfectly.
So for me, this is the second time I come to a COP meeting in Baku. The first time was last year in Dubai. And I can appreciate some differences. So last year, one of, say, I will call a complaint, or one of the observations that the topic of critical minerals, for example, in the energy transition was missing. There was some meetings, but very little. I was here I think it was 15th, so the energy day, and it was really a topic on the table. So there was several meetings on these topics, different pavilions. And I think this is a significant difference. So it's something that I think important from our point of view, something that is changing. Not only that, last year, the REMTech meeting we had at the Italy Pavilion was one of the very few geologists who were involved when we talk about land planning and so on. This year, I saw several other meetings on similar topics in different pavilions. So I would say the topics are somehow shifting, getting broader from my perspective of a geologist. I always repeat, I'm very aware this is not the only profession, the only aspect, but I would say that part that I think is the very basic and very fundamental for the discussion that COP is having. This time, this COP is there, so it's starting to be there, and this makes me very, let's say, having hopes and a lot. I think this is an improvement, a strong improvement between the previous COP and this one, and I may have not the let's say the complete feeling of whatever is happening, but I've been there here 3 days, so it's a partial, but it's already some kind of view on what is happening here.
It is an era of building up, of growing.
And for example, I've seen also, I was in the meeting in the people, the different national agencies, space agency of all the world were involved, and they were discussing about Earth observations and how to apply and how to share data and how to apply the knowledge from satellite to the climate change, which again for me is something that I see also related to the geological sciences.
Thank you, David. Maureen.
What David said. I think I'll add on to what he said, with respect to what we're seeing, the trends of discussion with critical raw materials, and that I think maybe going into the next COP, right? What's the next stage? I think it's getting the conversation between the groups that are here that are really people focused. Right. And so, I mean, we're talking a lot about the science and the technology and how do we make these things work and that sort of thing. But we have to get the minerals to make it work. And that means we have to have the support of the people in those communities. And whether you're trying to recycle it or you're trying to get it fresh out of the ground, you're still going to need support of people. And so I think what I would like to see is that we're able to, sort of take that next step at COP30 and start having some of those conversations with the people so that we can, and really honest conversations, right? And that's to me the greatest thing about COP is you're somewhat in a bubble, right? So because you're encouraged to come here and say what you think, and to have constructive debate, not just to be here to agree with each other, right? And I think that is for me, that's always the greatest value. Again, just like this is my second COP, and I really value the exchange. And so I'm hoping that folks in the audience have some questions and some comments and, maybe even want to challenge us a little bit on what we've said. Because I think that's how we learn when we challenge each other and we ask hard questions.
Thank you, Maureen. If you got any question, please put your hand up. We are here to answer. Yes, please. Can you come here to the microphone? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your intervention. I just wanted to ask a question for you, because you said that when you try to find the problem to solve, you use public methodology that involve people from the bottom. So I was wondering, do you select people that are scientists, or there is also an active involvement of citizens or students? So which type of people do you work with?
I'm going to answer you. I just want to let the tech guy know that the other microphone is dead. So thank you for that question. So yes, we do ask of the public, and that is something that is incorporated into all of the projects, is being able to communicate with, it's a two-way communication, right? It's not just we're putting something on the website and we expect people to come learn from it, right? We have public forums. It really depends on the project, but very much so we want to hear from everyone, not just people who have specific scientific or political expertise or something like that. We want to hear from anyone. Do you want to add to that? You're good? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question. And I'm going to remember you that COP30 will be in Belém, in Brazil, and Maureen said, and adaptation is expected to be the big topic, as well as a spotlight on biodiversity being so close to the rainforest. So our engagement is for next year in Brazil. Rudy, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, Rudy. I've got a question for you. I was pretty impressed about your presentation. What do you think, in 2 words, that it is really necessary to ensure successful policy for the green energy transition in Europe, but not only in Europe, of course?
I think to be quick, to be very short in response to this, which requires in reality more than 1 day, I think there are 3 elements, very important elements. First thing, to believe really that the energy transition is the only solution we have to make a more sustainable planet, a more sustainable way to live on this planet. Because as we have seen and we see on the press, so there are many, areas of the globe, let's say, that are not really convinced that what we are doing here in Europe and in the rest of Europe also, that believe that energy transition is important for having a more sustainable planet. So we need really to convince every one of us that if we want to live on this planet in a sustainable way, we really need to shift the way we are using the resources of this planet. First thing. Second thing, I think it's a question of education. We really need to educate the people and hopefully count on the new generations helping us, in understanding the importance and about, making a more greener planet. And this means establishing, all the procedures we said, reducing the CO2, pumping of CO2 into the atmosphere, use more in a more sustainable way the resources we have, be more greener, in our homes and all that kind of stuff. So educate. And third thing, I think, I don't think that the industrial players have understood that the energy transition is an opportunity, it's a fantastic opportunity, also for the oil and gas companies. I mean, the oil and gas companies, all the people working, that they have worked so far in order to extract oil and gas from the subsoil, they now have to become, a sector of people that will store the CO2 into the aquifer, in the deep aquifers, in the deep geological formations. So this means that we need to change and shift really from one thing to another thing without really losing any job, if we are intelligent in understanding that the energy transition is an opportunity, and is an opportunity for the industrial players. So I think these 3 elements should be really clear in our minds and the minds of everywhere. And I hope that at COP29, people will be discussing about this, and then will make something really stronger in terms of, understanding that this is, the only way we have to really to live on this planet in a sustainable way.
Educate, inform, and share. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you very much, Rudy. Rudy?
No problem. So thank you very much for the question. And yeah, it's really exciting to be here. And I imagine for you guys that are in the pavilion, and also you can go around and then compare, let's say, what we can offer as Italian Pavilion to the rest of the community, and the experience we had, in many ways. Remembering that our country is the first country in recycling plastics in Europe, probably in the world. It's the first country that is very close to achieving the objective of renewable energies, so shift from oil and gas into renewable energies. So we have some good thing, really, some good KPIs that have been really evident from the last report from ISPRA, for example. And yes, we need to do more, but I think, again, if every one of us can put a bean on the table at the end, we will have a lot of beans that can be used for everyone.
Thank you, Rudy. We are doing our best here in Baku, and Maureen has got something to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit to what Rudy said. And when I talk to people, particularly back in the United States, we are a high consumer nation. And of course, we're not the only one in the world that's a high consumer nation, but we very much are. And when I think about what really needs to be done, or the piece that's really missing is people understanding, truly understanding what their role is, right? The role that they play in all of this, and what it means to be sustainable. I'm sitting, Rudy and Daniel can't see me, but I'm sitting here with my cell phone in my lap. Right? And all of these critical minerals that we're talking about, almost all of them are in this cell phone. And this is an iPhone 15. And I gotta say, I think my first one was an iPhone 8. And I've had one ever since. And I really, just the other day, I was thinking, shame on me, right? Because I'm going along with my life. And, I'm trying to stay connected to my children who are leaving home, and, everything else. And I just want to have the greatest technology to make that easy. And I'm not really thinking about what that means and where the parts came from and what's going to happen to that phone when it's no longer usable. Right. And so I think that's, to Rudy's point with respect to education. I think a lot of the education is just people really understanding what it means to be a consumer. And that's with no judgment, right? I don't say that with any judgment. It's people will consume or won't consume. But I think the education part is they're having enough knowledge so that they can make an informed decision about their consumer. But that then gets to the point Rudy was saying about, well, how do we make a switch not only to greener forms of energy, but really being a sustainable planet without losing jobs when we're such a consumer society in the North.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you, Rudy.
Exactly.
Rudy,
No, yes, I was really.
are you adding something?
No, I just said that exactly as Maureen said. It's really.
We totally agree.
We totally agree. We just need to find really a balance, but we need to do something really, and then probably speed up, let's say, the actions that we have in place. And totally
You're right. Daniel, are you with us? Daniel, are you still with us? Probably can't hear us. Okay, maybe later. David, would you like to add something about the discussion? Because I need to propose you something else to discuss. I mean,
Please.
194 nations are here in Baku now to discuss the necessary financial investment to achieve our 1.5 grade centigrade goal. What advice would you give to the negotiators to improve now their decision for the future?
So talking about finance, something I mentioned also in another panel, probably I would say invest also in education. So this is not on the table, but starting from the experience of the Critical Raw Material Act in Europe. So one of the point of the observation that we did as European Federation of Geologists, but for example, I know also was an observation from the Ministry of the Environment of Italy, from ISPRA, is that there were no specific funds for education. And this is really a weak point in that piece of legislation, because we do not have the know-how, and what you invest in education has an incredible economic impact. The investment you do in education it is multiplied several times, and there are data. This is more, let's say, about the investment of geology, but this I would include in the investment in geology also this part, that what you invest can give you a benefit up to 1,000 times. So a huge benefit from your investment, and that is really something that is not on the table of discussion now. So invest to improve education, put money on that part. And I think if we think on investing in that sector, we can really have an economical benefit in the future. And then here we can spend a lot of time on discussing where, so the different skill set that are necessary, so on. But I would just keep the observation general.
Okay, so what you are saying is that the process of transition can be pushed, can be improved through the use of green finance.
Green finance spent on education, not only focused on technical skills, but also other soft skills that are necessary for the transition, but also educate the different stakeholders that are involved, the people, maybe also the higher level, the politicians or the decision makers. They also need to be educated somehow, and so also some of the money could be spent also at that level. So I would say dedicate part of the funds really on improve, because everything, I mean, any activities that we do anywhere is just done by human being. Everything around is just human being. So when you increase the know-how and the skills of the people, of the human being, everything improves. And this is when you work like in a company, it's very easy. You want to make the company stronger, you just hire the best people. And so this is, I mean, the fast way to improve. If we upskill, we improve the people, that we improve the whole climate industry around that.
Everything and everyone is connected on the planet Earth.
Yes.
Thank you, David. Maureen.
I'll just add a point on education. You know, I think it was earlier today in the REMTech session, the point was made that it can't just be governments that are coming up with the financing, right? That private sector is going to have to come up with the financing. And it's been my experience in my 35-year career that it's getting harder and harder to find companies, governments, NGOs, you name it, across the board. It's getting more difficult to find entities that will invest in training and education, right? So I think when David is talking about education, it's university education, it's trade school education, but it's also continuing education. And how do we make sure that we're getting the people that we need with the skills that we need in a very timely fashion? And, and when I think about this, and the whole scale of time that is taken to get us to where we are on the planet, when I say we need it now, I mean, we need it now. Right. And so it's not necessarily even, okay, let's add another billion to the number. It's let's target that money. And from my perspective, to David's point, you get such an investment out of the education and training, right? It pays dividends well beyond the point at which you're paying for the education. And it seems to me that first and foremost, that's the part that governments should be paying for, right? Because governments should be supporting and investing in their people. And education is something that pays in so many ways. And I mean, there's study after study after study that talks about education pulling people out of poverty, et cetera. So, if I were going to say something to the negotiators and the folks making the decisions, I would say you need to invest in education now. With respect, we've been talking, of course, we're here to talk about geology, right? I mean, there's a number of different disciplines, but geoscience programs at the university level are closing all over the globe. They're closing because they're losing individuals. But if those programs were free, if there were scholarships, if there were investments made in those programs, and also in promoting, how much of a difference you can make in the world if you get into one of those types of jobs and into one of those types of programs, then we would have more of them, not less of them.
Thank you, Maureen. Thank you very much. I don't know if Daniel is with us, but probably not. We have got.
I think he had some trouble and he got dropped.
Yes.
He sent me a
screenshot
on the cell phone.
Okay. If we have got any other question, I think we are going to close, but with the last action. I mean, if you would start right now, going and improving through the path of energy transition, where are you starting from and why? Concerning your experience, your action, your position on the planet. For David, for Maureen, and for, I don't know, Rudy, if you are still there, and for you to close the session.
So I will start. And you may say I have a bias on geology, so I will start from there, but I will explain why. For the energy transition, we say many times we need critical minerals, but we need to find at the very beginning the minerals. And certainly it's not the same situation in all the parts of the world, but there is a clear need of finding new deposits, new sources, so and mapping them. So I would really start from there from exploration and having these sources. Then there is a geographical issue, and different countries are having different geographical influence. So there is a political part also in this exploration, of course. But in any case, I would say it is really the democratic way of move on, of having more deposits, because of the abundance and the presence of the resources, reserve and resources, is the very basic for the whole supply chain, and also to have a good supply chain and diversified and secure supply chain. So I would start from there in a very practical way.
Yeah.
Exploration.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, David. Maureen?
Yeah, so I guess for me, just a little bit more about myself. I said earlier, I'm an ecologist. I'm also a social scientist. My graduate work was in political science and policy analysis. And so there's not a lot of scientists that also are political scientists. So I'm a little bit of a rare bird. And with all of that, it's really important for me to mentor youth that are coming up. You know, I start with my two children. I have a 17-year-old son and a 20-year-old daughter. You know, they're getting ready to go out and start their lives and be part of the world. And I expect that they will set it on fire and really do great things. But just really trying to mentor them to be the best versions of themselves and to really try to live a sustainable life in a culture that keeps telling you need to want more. I keep trying to tell them they need to have less. But then also, transitioning that mentoring to young employees that I work with, to university students that I've taught over the years, et cetera. And I think just having that human connection, is really important. I mean, these are very, very big issues, and it can seem incredibly overwhelming. At least it's overwhelming for me on many days. It's quite so. But when I can have that connection and, really help somebody else see what kind of future they can have, and that future is positive, that hope is not lost here, right? I have a very positive attitude towards the future, because as I talk to the generation that's just coming out of school and wanting to look for a profession, they are so bright, they're so eager, they're so talented, and they are so good at working with others, more so than me, a Gen Xer. We weren't that great at working with others when we first got out of school. And so, yeah, that really, the mentoring piece is really important to me.
This is your point, Maureen. Thank you very much. I'm not sure we have got any more time to talk and to discuss. I think we have finished our time. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you to David Govoni, President of the European Federation of Geologists, of Rudy Ruggeri, of the Italian National Council of Geologists, of course, to Maureen Gallagher, Global Ambassador, European Federation of Geologists, Colorado, United States, and to Daniel Caceres Batra, Representante Regional and Sustainable Ocean Alliance, Lima, Peru. Continue to stay with us in the Italian pavilion, continue to work and to join the COP29, Baku, Azerbaijan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much from Italy. Have a nice day.
Bye, Rudy. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. See you in Italy. Bye.
See you.
I went too long. I didn't realize we were so close on. I looked at my watch and let you talk more.